This is the Dzogchen Semde Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Come, let us explore how meditation breaks karma's grip. Here's how it works, followed by the group practice known as meditating like a Jedi. We could think of Buddhism in terms of proto-Buddhism, matriarchy, and institutional Buddhism, patriarchy. Dun dun dun. So matriarchal Buddhism, proto-Buddhism, is defined simply by the Eightfold Path. It's all about simplicity. That is why the Buddha insisted in the second to the last passage of his Discourse on the Four Bases of Mindfulness that one could master this path in as little as 7 days. 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path pertains to loving kindness. 0% deals with the karmic threats of punishment or promises of reward. The fundamental duality of Buddhism is not us and them, up and down, hot and cold. The fundamental dualism of Buddhism is simply pushing and pulling, hoping and fearing, dreading and desiring, and the like. The myth of karma feeds into that. It speaks to our lowest, most venal backwater of our brain. You know, our instinctual drives are great when used sparingly, but when they become our North Star, there is no fulfillment in our life. It's just a hollow, empty existence. Replacing our survival instincts with love and making love our North Star is one of the hallmarks of spiritual matriarchy. The more we indulge in the duality that hates punishment and craves reward, the more mental turmoil we experience. I can't tell you. Well, I can tell you. I'm about to do that right now. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks. That 90% of humans are involved in some form of religious or secular patriarchy, whether it has to do with faith or work or society or hobbies or home. 90% of us are still stuck in this dysfunctional worldview. However, pristine awareness, which is just a poetic way of describing mindfulness and meditation, calm, when is the key, is the practice of us passively cooperating with our autonomic nervous system. Doing so automatically calms the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala and gently stimulates the empathy of our anterior cingulate gyrus. 50% of the autonomic nervous system deals with the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the key that unlocks the vault of peace. Peace and love are as close as our cooperation with our own autonomic nervous system. As a way to ground this into the ancient teachings, let's look at the 10th passage of the Spaciousness of Vajrasattva, composed by the great Buddhist reformer Vajra many centuries ago. People talk of karma. In truth, there is only consciousness beyond our notions, our fantasies. For those imprisoned in the ups and downs of thought and emotion, the pristine continuum of awareness remains hidden. For those drowning in the turmoil of the duality of fleeing punishment and chasing reward, that is the path that is antithetical to pristine awareness. So let's conclude this with a quick review of the neuroscience behind meditation. When we have the misfortune of following the advice of religious patriarchy, and we actively focus and actively analyze, perhaps concentrating our breath, or contemplating impermanence, or emptiness, or not self, or stress, when we do that, we wind up so exhausting both our dorsolateral and medial prefrontal cortices that we begin presenting with symptoms of depression, as well as triggering our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. Fortunately, neither the amygdala nor the prefrontal cortex constitute the entirety of our central nervous system. Consider the spinal cord, both its aspects, which together are described as the nexus of our autonomic nervous system. As I mentioned previously, by passively cooperating with our autonomic nervous system, instead of actively competing against it, by passively cooperating with our autonomic nervous system, the anger and aggression of our amygdala is calmed, and the empathy of our anterior cingulate gyrus is gently stimulated. So I mentioned the two aspects of our autonomic nervous system. Let us begin with mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we are wired to automatically access the middle bit of our spinal cord, which could be described as the nexus of our sympathetic nervous system, which has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way, to help us to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice all mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, or imagination, be they external or internal, physical or mental, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring, glorious or grotesque. Let's talk rules of thumb. What's the key to sustainably and efficiently watching the antics of mind? To do that, all we got to do is silently and mentally recite the verb watch. Every time we feel our chest swell with inhalation, but what do we do with all that stuff that we noticed? That brings us to meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we have evolved to automatically access both the tippy top and the very bottom, both the penthouse and the basement of that same spinal cord. Together as a team, this describes the second aspect of our autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. This bad boy has evolved to help us to relax during our exhalation to such a point, to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, less defining, and even as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Now, assuming this is a metaphor, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could look tantalizing to the eye, could feel non-graspable to the hand? And so we see that whether we're talking about emptiness or no self, or birthlessness, or deathlessness, or changelessness, or dealing with metaphors to describe the fleeting aspect of mind that feels less graspable. What is the most efficient way for us to rest in mind's non-graspable nature? Easy. All we gotta do is silently and mentally recite the verb rest. Every time we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale. And now, my friends, you know the essence of the Buddha's path. For by simply playing with mindfulness and meditation every 12 hours or so, the remaining 6 folds of the Buddha's path are accomplished automatically. The more we watch and rest, the more we cannot help but notice change. The more we cannot help but experience greater kindness of intention, communication, conduct, and commerce. The more we watch and rest in harmony with our breath, the more we cannot help but experience the effortless effort in which our choices, utterances, and deeds flow from love's deeply centered spontaneity. The more, and that is why in the second to the final passage of the Buddha's discourse on the 4 bases of mindfulness, he promised that one could so master his path in as little as 7 days that one practices it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. This is not a commentary on what we notice. This is not a commentary on what we feel. This is simply a commentary of our mastery of the Buddha's toolbox of 8 tools. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel, for Meditate Like a Jedi is made possible thanks to the generosity of viewers just like you. And now for the remainder of this morning's live stream, let us sit and breathe and watch and rest. The free fall of meditation could trigger both our controlling as well as our rigid tendencies. A useful workaround could be found in the following variation of Bengali crease counting. We could touch the tip of our left thumb to the lowest set of creases on its little finger, thus keeping track of our first set of 16 inhalations. We can now rest this left hand palms up in our lap. Every time we silently and mentally recite the verb watch as we feel our chest swell with breath, we could advance our right thumb up the creases and tips of its fingers. Together, let us practice this right now, beginning with our right little finger. As you can tell, my right thumb has run out of places upon which to count. Therefore, I return my attention to my left hand and advance my left thumb. And now you get the basic feeling of how we could how we could count 16 sets of 16 inhalations each. Counting 16 inhalations on our right hand takes about a little bit more than a minute. Counting 16 sets of 16 inhalations each takes a little bit more than 20 minutes. In time, you could desire to meditate for more than 20 minutes. You may wish to meditate for 40 or even 60. When beginning to gather our first collection of 20 minutes, we could rest the first knuckle at the base of our right middle finger, upon the tip of our left middle finger, palms up in our lap. When beginning to gather our second collection of 20 minutes, we could rest the second knuckle of our right middle finger upon the tip of our left middle finger. And you guessed it, when beginning to gather our third collection of 20 minutes, we could rest the third knuckle of our right middle finger upon the tip of our left middle finger, palms up in our lap. Overwhelmed? The antidote is repetition. Come, practice me once every 12 hours or so, and within a week or two, you too could master the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Elitists will often insist that we must master the full lotus posture, but the Buddha never taught that. And the most ancient Buddhist statuary depicts the Buddha sitting not with their shins crossed, with their shins stacked like two pieces of bread forming a sandwich, a PB&J, if you will. All we need to concern ourselves when it comes to sitting is it sustainable, and does it facilitate the lengthening of our spine as we inhale? The moment you have a specific question about the philosophies or techniques of Taoism, Buddhism, Tantra, Dzogchen, Zen, or Mahamudra, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 10 minutes or so. The moment you have a specific question about the philosophies or techniques of Taoism, Buddhism, Tantra, Dzogchen, Zen, or Mahamudra, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I do check for questions about once every 5 minutes or so. In about 3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's second lesson, followed by meditating like a Jedi. You know, I think I should probably put this a different way. Let's see, 3, 4, 8. In about 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening lesson, followed by meditating like a Jedi. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.